So welcome to the second in the series of we're talking about organic acids, and I'm very excited that there's a lot of interest in this. We've had amazing amounts of wonderful feedback from both patients and doctors alike, because this is like the best test in the world, and no one knows how to interpret it. And you guys are going to learn firsthand here how all this stuff works. So about 29 years ago, wow, do the math on that. Yeah, about 29 years ago, my father died rather suddenly. And so when I was 10, growing up in Berkeley, California, my parents divorced, 1970s, early 1970s. And my mom moved out of the house. She went back to college. She got a bachelor's degree, got her master's degree, started her career. My dad raised my sisters and I. So kind of unusual in the 70s to be raised by a single father. So anyways, when my dad died, it was a big deal because I was very close to my father. And so I was the day I got the phone call learning that he was dying, I had a it's a true story. I had a one-way ticket in my hand, one-way ticket to China. Can you believe this? This was 19, yeah, I don't know, 85 or 86, something like that. And I came back to the United States. I was in Hawaii at the time. I was about to go to China. I came back to the U.S., spent about a month with my dad. He died extremely suddenly from pancreatic cancer. And then I was like, screw it, I'm leaving for sure. I went back to Asia as I had planned and ended up in a monastery in southern Thailand. And I lived in this monastery for about 2 years. And I eventually, long story, I'm not going to bore you with the whole thing, but I came back to the United States a couple, 3 years later, and I had, unbeknownst to myself, a parasitic infection with something called Entamoeba histolytica. Went to all the doctors, did everything you could, couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, had chronic fatigue, was quite sick. And then I eventually stumbled into this whole functional medicine world, was treated properly by a functional medicine doctor, had a complete relief of my symptoms almost instantaneously. When you have chronic fatigue for years and years, and all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, you feel like a normal person, it's pretty dramatic. And decided that, hey, this is pretty good stuff. Maybe I'll base my career around this. So rather than going back to the monastery and ordaining as a monk, I decided to stay in the United States and become a functional medicine doctor. And so here I am today. And that's why I do this stuff, because it really makes a big difference. So let's talk about organic acids testing. Mitochondrial energy and oxidative stress is a section today. And these two things are linked. That's why we're talking about them together. So for those of you that missed the first one, introduction to me, I've been doing this for a long time, 24, 25 years. We've trained a lot of practitioners in how to do all this work. The new training program, in fact, that we released this year, 2016, is a year-long program that includes about 4 or 5 months for doctor training just on organic acids. It's quite a complex test, and want to make sure that all the people that we train know how to interpret it. And then also make sure that you all, as patients, understand what the test results mean, because usually the doctors don't have 5 or 10 hours to sit down and tell you everything you want to know about the test. That's why I'm doing this series of talks, so you guys are educated. You can ask for the test from your doctors. You can understand the interpretations better. If you've had the test done already, in my practice, a lot of my patients have been telling me, hey, this is great. We didn't really have time to cover the test. It's so nice that you're doing this. Now I understand why this test is so important. So that's really the goal for today. Now, also want to just present all this in a context, because it's really easy when we hear things to not understand the context, and then it gets a little confusing. So we'll talk about why functional medicine. Functional medicine I see as our platform for emotional and spiritual growth, meaning that we restore the physical health to the person so that their emotional and spiritual growth can blossom. I had a patient today. That's a wonderful woman. She's in her early 60s. And she's healthy now after being really sick for a really long time. And so I'm like, okay, Doris, what are we going to do? What are you going to do now that you're healthy? And we had a whole consultation for like a half an hour around this. And she's going to now focus on her children and grandchildren and being kind of like a beacon of light in the family. And she said, as I've gotten healthier and healthier throughout this process of working with you, Dr. Kalish, my kids are asking, what are you doing? My grandkids are noticing I'm not this grumpy old lady anymore. She's becoming vital and healthy and wonderful again, as she was before, because her physical health is back. So now we want her to translate that into an inspirational message to her kids and her grandkids. And what a great reason to get healthy for a woman with a big family like her, because it's not just about her being physically healthy. It's about her emotional and spiritual growth, not just for herself, but for her whole family. I have a patient, his name is Jonathan. He's a very, very wealthy individual. And I've worked with him for a lot of years. I love him. He's a wonderful guy. There's nothing against this particular individual. But, the last time that we did a consultation, he had flown to Bali, Indonesia. He had bought a bunch of artwork, so much artwork that he had to actually put it into, one of those trailer things. He had to like rent a whole container, brought the container back on a ship to his beautiful home in California, and now he has all this Balinese art. So for me to work with someone like Jonathan and get him physically healthy so he can go buy art in Bali for his private home, that's not really a great emotional and spiritual growth experience for him or for anyone else. So the goal of functional medicine to me is not to just make people feel healthy so they can go out and do things that are personal gain things. The point of functional medicine is for people to be healthy so they can go out and help other people. That's what we're doing this for. Okay, that's the whole point. Now we have a treatment model. Now that we see what we're doing, and we're always thinking in functional medicine about the underlying cause, what physiological damage results from that cause, how are we going to treat the various body systems, and then from your perspective as a patient, well, what are the symptoms that I'm having? Why am I overweight? Why am I tired? Why am I depressed? Why am I anxious? Why do I have digestive problems? Why do I not feel like having sex anymore? Why am I in pain? Why do I have allergies? And so on and so on. So the symptoms in functional medicine are absolutely critical, and we want to address them. But the hallmark of functional medicine and what makes it different from conventional medicine is that we're always looking to discover what is the underlying cause of that particular problem. So you understand where we're at now with the organic acids testing. For the most part, the organic acids testing will either let you know what the underlying cause of your problem is, or it'll very often tell you what the physiological damage has been from the underlying cause. So as a simple example, let's say that the underlying cause of your problem is heavy metal toxicity. Front page of the papers today, Portland, Oregon, cadmium exposure. I don't know if you guys saw that article, but it's a big deal. Heavy metals, chemicals are a big deal. Many people get sick from this. So that may be the underlying cause of your problem, but what do those heavy metals and chemicals cause in the body? They cause inflammation. They cause oxidative stress. That's the physiological damage that we see on the organic acids test. You don't see the cadmium molecule, the mercury molecule in the lab. You see the effect or the impact of that. Let's say that your main problem is gluten sensitivity or a digestive tract infection. You may or may not see that on the organic acids test, but you'll see the results of that: inflammation, insulin resistance, the things that happen when these underlying causes trigger physiological damage. So again, organic acids testing, sometimes we see the underlying causes. It does have a screening portion of this test for GI infections. Sometimes we'll see problems like insulin resistance, inflammation that are showing up on the test. So sometimes the organic acids test means you need to dig deeper, sometimes not so much. What we're going to get into in terms of, like a bigger picture concept here is that we have your perspective as a patient. What are the pains that you're going through, the symptoms? What are the gains? What are the things that you want to do to get better? So like with Doris, I was talking about earlier, pains were joint pain, fatigue, depression, anxiety, didn't feel like going on the house or doing anything. Gains are that those things are better. But what are the life goals now? Are that, hey, she can act as a beacon of light for her kids and grandkids. So it's not just about relieving symptoms. It's about taking your life to the next level so that you can achieve the things that you're on this planet to do in the short time that you have. Okay, and again, we have the corrections here: underlying cause, physiological damage. We work with body systems, and we ultimately want to relieve symptoms. Okay, so that's how we design programs with all of this in mind. Now, just so you can see where we're at for this session, it's a 5-part series. Although, hey, you guys keep showing up. I'm going to keep doing these like for the rest of my life. So it's a 5-part series. We're just going to keep going. Eventually, we'll have like 700 of these, right? And where we are now is in section number 2, energy and oxidative stress. What we did last time, if you haven't heard it, we have it recorded. You're welcome to listen. We talked about carbohydrate metabolism. Then we're going to get into the next session. In a month, we'll talk about neurotransmitters. We're going to get into yeast overgrowth and all the digestive problems that people have. And then we're going to wrap up in the final of these series talking about detoxification. Okay, so we're at the energy portion of this. So one of the most common sources of fatigue and weight gain are problems with mitochondrial energy production, and no one ever talks about this. It's like a mystery to doctors. It's a mystery to patients. The number one complaint that I see in my clinic, and all the doctors that I talk to all the time say the same thing, is that people are fatigued. You would think we should focus on fatigue as a problem. Okay, and so that's why I want to talk about this tonight. So we're going to talk about the lab testing behind this. We're going to discover, this is a really important one here. This is like a little sneaky one here, but let's talk about this. Why taking tons of supplements that seem like they should work don't always help. That's a really big issue. And we're going to talk about the science behind this so you can see how the labs work and understand that you can actually figure these things out with a pretty sophisticated series of tests that are now available. Okay, so number one here, let's take a look at the bigger picture. And this is, for those of you that might have had a biochemistry or physiology class, this is called the citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle. For those of you that don't have a really strong science background, this is just basically how your body makes energy. And in the body, we call energy ATP. Units of energy are called ATP. And so you need to manufacture ATP in order to walk up the stairs, in order to think a thought, in order to detoxify, in order to digest. You have to have ATP in order to do anything. It's the currency of the body. It would be like not having ATP to the body would be if you had like an economy that didn't have any cash in it anymore. Okay, nothing would get done. If we didn't have any money, can you imagine just if money stopped? Okay, energy, when it runs out, is a really big problem for a lot of different reasons. And so how does the body work? We take fat as a nutrient, carbohydrates as a nutrient, and protein, and we convert them into this stuff called acetyl-CoA that ends up converting through the citric acid cycle into energy. So we take food and we turn it into energy. That's basically what we're talking about. And there's not that many choices. It's either going to be fat, carbs, and proteins. Those are the three possibilities that you can convert into energy. In order to make fat into energy, we have to pull it down to where the energy is made, and there's a nutrient called carnitine that does that. In order to make carbohydrates into energy or fuel, we have to pull them down here, and there's a series of chemical compounds that'll elevate if that's not working. They'll call pyruvate and lactate. Okay, and then in some cases, although this is not the preferred source of energy, we can use protein converted into amino acids for energy as well. If you're doing a lot of conversion of protein into amino acids for energy, that's considered not the greatest thing in the world. And this chemical over here called beta-hydroxybutyrate will build up. So what we're analyzing here is how can you use these macronutrients, fat, carb, and protein, to make energy in the body. And in a perfect world, if we were all slender and happy people, we would be burning up a lot of fat for fuel, so we didn't have the fat sticking around in the body in an unsightly way, and we would be able to use carbohydrates for fuel whenever we felt like. And what this test looks at is how well is that actually, how much is that happening, how well is that working? And there's key nutrients that are required in order for this to occur. And if you can't burn fat and you can't burn carbs for energy well, then these markers here build up, and that's what we're measuring on the test. It's really simple when you think about it. You can't burn fat, what happens? It's like if there was a roadblock. If you can't burn fat, there's a block right here, then there's a buildup of traffic, right? These markers build up. If you can't burn carbohydrate, again, it's like a roadblock. This doesn't happen, and so these chemicals build up. And that's what we're measuring on the test. So let's take a look at a little bit more detail. Most organic acids, this is an organic acids panel, they're intermediaries or they're end stage results of energy production. And I'll show you some more detail on that. High levels in general means that something is wrong. Okay. Low levels in general means that there's something else that's wrong. But what we're going to focus on tonight in general is when the levels are high on the test, it means there's this backing up. Again, think about, like, I live in the Silicon Valley, San Francisco Bay Area. When you look at a road and you see that there's a lot of traffic backed up, there's a lot of cars there, that's a bad thing. No one's ever happy when they pull onto the freeway and then they just see like thousands of cars and no one's moving. So when these numbers are high, it's just like a traffic jam. Something's blocked up ahead, and so we have a lot of these organic acids. High organic acids is bad. High organic acids, just like a traffic jam building up, right? Now, again, the mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. So think about it like your car. Your car has an engine. The engine is what generates all the power. If you took the engine out of the car and everything else in the car was working perfectly, the car wouldn't work, right? It wouldn't be able to move forward. Nothing would happen. If you still had the battery in the car, I guess you could make the windows go up and down and stuff like that. You could open the doors, okay, but it's not going to move forward. So it's the exact same thing in the human body. The mitochondria is the energy or a portion of the body. Mitochondria is where we make the energy. It's the powerhouse of the cell. And if it's not working, we're not going to be able to make energy. We're not going to be able to make ATP, and you're going to have a problem. And there's actually there's like a certain amount of mechanics to this, right? There's like a physical process where your body is actually taking energy from fat or carb or protein, and then trying to convert that energy into energy inside the cells. And this is basically what a mitochondria looks like. Obviously, they're tiny, tiny, tiny. You got gazillions of them in the body. And where do mitochondria reside? They reside in really high numbers in lean muscle tissue, although of course they're everywhere in the body, but you have tons and tons of them in lean muscle tissue. So if you're not physically fit and you don't have a really good lean muscle mass, you don't have a lot of lean muscle tissue, you don't work out basically, you're not going to have as many mitochondria. That's one of the reasons why people get tired when they don't exercise. Okay, and what does a mitochondria do? It, for our purposes tonight, does a lot of things, but we're going to focus on its ability to make energy. Oh, here's a little ad. You can schedule an appointment with me if you want. kalishwellness.com is a website. You can talk to my office manager if you want. Okay, we work with patients all over the world. It's a great thing, especially if you want to do some of these tests. So Krebs cycle is, or citric acid cycle, it means the same thing. It's the final catabolic pathway. So we want to talk about what that word means, because catabolic turns out to be really important. Catabolic means you're breaking something down. So you eat some food, you chew on the food, it goes into your body, you have to convert it to energy. You have to break it down. So catabolic can be very good. Breaking things down is important if you want to release energy that's stored in the food. However, if you're overly catabolic, that can be a really big problem because that means that you're breaking down things that you shouldn't. So we want a certain amount of catabolic processes in the body. We can go too far and be overly catabolic, and then bad things start to happen. So when you're healthy and fit, your body will take your body will take fat and make it into energy. Your body will grab some carbohydrate and make it into energy. When you're stressed out of your mind, maybe you're stuck in traffic trying to get to your job in Silicon Valley, and it's these days an hour and a half, even if you leave at 6 in the morning. It takes you an hour and a half just to drive down to your job at Apple Computer. Maybe you're stressed out of your mind because your mother-in-law just moved in. Maybe you're stressed out of your mind because your child who has an autism-related problem is someone you're caring for. Maybe you're stressed out of your mind because you're in a bad marriage. Maybe you're stressed out of your mind because you just got your dream job, but you have to move across the country. Whatever it is, it really stresses us hard. Not the little things, but the really big things that stress us hard. Force us into what we call catabolic physiology in a negative way. So when we're stressed bad enough, all the hormones and different mechanisms in the body shift, and we start to go into this emergency mode where we're no longer burning fat and carbs very efficiently. And what do we do instead? We start to burn amino acids for fuel. And this is a very unhealthy long-term strategy. It's a very good short-term strategy. So let's say, for example, you're sitting on the beach, you're relaxing, you're eating some coconuts and fishing, and life is good. And then, all of a sudden, out of the blue, 15 saber-toothed tigers start running at you. And you think, oh, great, this is not good. You throw down your fishing pole, you grab a coconut, and you start to run. That kind of burst of energy that you need when you're running away from things that are dangerous is made in an emergency situation, and it's made under what we call the Cori cycle. And the Cori cycle means that you can take protein or amino acids and burn them up for fuel. It's not the preferred way to do it, but you can do it. And in emergency situations, that's an okay thing to do. But what most of us are going through is long-term chronic stress, and so we're stuck in this Cori cycle all the time. which means that we're using up amino acids all the time for fuel. Now you have to get these amino acids from somewhere. Okay, you're going to get a certain amount of them from your food, but what ends up happening is we start to break down two parts of the body. We start to become catabolic, and we start to break down lean muscle mass in order to get energy, and we break down the tissues in the lining of the gut to get amino acids for energy. So when you're stressed, your lean muscle is going to go away, and your gut lining has become damaged. We call that leaky gut. The more stressed you are, the more damaged your gut lining becomes. The more stressed you are, the more you break down lean muscle. And remember we said a minute ago that mitochondria are in the lean muscle? Where if you're stressed and you're breaking down your muscle cells, you're going to end up being really tired because you don't have enough of these mitochondria. If you're stressed and you're breaking down your gut lining, you're going to end up with a leaky gut problem, which is why we see this so commonly in our practices because we're stressed. So when you make energy using the Cori cycle, and this is one of these things where you learn this and you're like, no way, but you can look this up. I'm not making this up. This is really true. Okay, let me go back a few slides. I want to show you. When you're making energy the normal way, in what's called the citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle, you end up with 34, 36, somewhere around 30-something units of ATP for every spin of this wheel here. Okay, so you grab a fat molecule, you grab some carbohydrate, goes through all these biochemical processes, and you end up with, let's say, 36 units of ATP. Okay, 36 units of energy. That's a good thing. When you're in the Cori cycle, and again, instead of using fat or carb for energy, now you're using amino acids for fuel. Where are they coming from? They're coming from your muscle tissue or your gut lining. You're catabolic. You're breaking your own tissue down. Imagine if you were a car, it would be like you ran out of gas, but instead of stopping, you started to grab parts off the car and convert them into fuel. That's what we do. We use our bodies for fuel when we run out of fuel. Okay. So normally you generate around 36 units of ATP. Guess what happens in the Cori cycle? In the Cori cycle, you have a net loss of 4 units of ATP. So let me explain that. So in the Cori cycle, you're going to create a molecule of glucose. But in order to do that, you actually have to contribute or use 6 units of ATP. And you only get 2 units of ATP back. So in other words, you can make energy in this emergency way, but you get 2 units of energy for every 6 units of energy that you use. So you actually are losing. There's a net loss of 4 units of energy here. Whereas you remember with the normal way of making energy, we have a plus of 36. So a normal person with great energy, great muscle mass, not too much body fat, they crank a round of energy, they get, boom, 36 units of ATP. Someone who's going through the Cori cycle because they're stressed and catabolic, they're grabbing muscle cells, they're grabbing gut lining tissue to make energy, they have a net loss of 4 units of ATP in order to make one round of this cycle go through. So this is why people end up being so exhausted, because they're actually having, it's like imagine, this is happening in a worldwide way now, right? This happened in the countries of Greece, and it happened in Ireland. The country itself and the banks and the people borrowed more money than they should have, right? They had losses and losses and losses and losses building up, and eventually many of these economies collapsed or nearly collapsed. It's the same thing inside the body. You can run this Cori cycle for a while, but if you're constantly running on a net loss of energy, eventually the whole system starts to fall apart. It collapses. It's almost like it's like your body's version of a Ponzi scheme. Okay. Again, Cori cycle versus the Krebs cycle. The Cori cycle occurs, this is a quick review here, during stress physiology. It's not that that's bad. It's just that we're not supposed to be stressed all the time. The Krebs cycle is how we make energy during normal times. And there's some more kind of technical stuff. Those of you guys in the technical stuff can read about this. But when we're going to look at some of these lab findings, you'll see in general when we're measuring how well the Krebs cycle is working. So when the Krebs cycle is shut down, remember, it's going to force your body to get energy from other sources. That's kind of the most important part. And those of you guys that are science nerds, you can read these slides later if you're really interested in it, okay? So there's another component here, which is that part of this happens, revolves around whether we have oxygen or not. So in a healthy situation, you have a lot of oxygen. Here's your mitochondria. And remember, you get this plus 36, plus 34 units of ATP. In a negative situation, you become anaerobic. This is not a good thing. Okay, and we have this buildup of pyruvate and lactate, and we're going to see this in a moment on the labs. That's a bad thing. That means that you're not making glucose into energy in the way you can ultimately, and you're going to be operating at a deficit. Okay, so this is improper use of the mitochondria. Now, another little factoid here, which is interesting, is that under normal circumstances, we have this nutrient called carnitine, and carnitine goes out and it grabs, see it says carnitine shuttle there, it grabs fatty acids, pulls them into the part of the mitochondria where we can make energy. This is a good thing. You want to be able to transport your fat. Imagine that you're a fat cell, you're just sitting there, you're being a fat cell. I guess if we were going to, speak anthropomorphically, you'd say probably fat cells are kind of lazy. It's a little lazy cell sitting there, not really doing much. And then what happens is the shuttle comes along, carnitine, it goes, hey, fat cell, I want some fatty acids. And then your fat cell's like, whoa, what's up? I'm just sitting here. Can I just relax? And they're like, no, we're going to use you for energy. So the carnitine grabs the fatty acid or fat, portion of the fat, pulls it into the mitochondria, and it burns it up for energy. And here's your energy, that little star over there, ATP. Everybody's happy. You want to be able to burn fat for energy. It's a good thing. Makes people feel good, makes them look good, etc. If that is not happening properly, then these other chemicals will build up, adipate, suberate, and ethylmalonate. So if we see high levels of ethylmalonate, adipate, or suberate on the lab, we know that the carnitine shuttle is not working and your body's not able to put fat into the right place to make it to turn it into fuel. And so what ends up happening? People get tired and they get overweight because they have a lot of stored fat. Every molecule of fat you have in your body, every fat cell is basically energy. It's just stored energy. And if carnitine's not able to truck it around properly, then that stored energy is going to sit there. It's unsightly and it's unhealthy because you're not able to make the energy in the proper way. Okay, so fat we should be using to burn energy, and when it's not working, not a good thing. So carnitine is incredibly important in energy production. It's not only important for people who want to lose weight, it's also very important for people who want to exercise, especially endurance athletes. And as most of you know, I love to bike ride. I spend 2 or 3 hours on my bike. Nothing better to me than being on your bike for 2 or 3 hours. But in order to burn energy in an endurance athletic role, whether it's cycling, swimming, or running, whatever it may be, you need to be able to use carnitine to access your fat. So we see this problem very commonly in endurance athletes as well. And again, you're using carnitine as a carrier to bring that fatty acid into the mitochondria so you can burn it up for fuel. Very, very important nutrient. Now, we're going to do something a little complicated. We're going to combine these two ideas. We talked a lot about the mitochondria already. Now we're going to segue into talking about oxidative stress. So I want to talk about what is oxidative stress in the first place. So oxidation, a common example we all know, you cut an apple in half, it starts to turn brown. Another common example that we all see every day, you got a rusty screw or nail lying out in the rain. That's the metal is oxidizing. So oxidative stress in general, if there's too much of it, is really dangerous and not a good thing. Tissues in your body can get oxidized. DNA can go through oxidative stress. That's not good, puts people at risk for cancer. You can have oxidation of cardiovascular tissue that causes cardiovascular disease. Oxidative stress is behind cancer, heart disease, diabetes. It's a factor in all the major health conditions that most of us in industrialized countries die from. Oxidative stress is very important. We take antioxidants either in supplement form or from our foods, this is called vegetables, right, in order to protect ourselves against oxidative stress. So this may not be the most professional example, but this is the way I think about it. Here's your mitochondria. Healthy mitochondria over here. Healthy, H for healthy. In a healthy mitochondria, you have a few free radicals, Free radicals are the result, what cause the oxidative stress. And then you have a ton of ATP. Remember, that's what we've been talking about this whole time, cellular energy. So you have lots of energy. They say abundant ATP powering your cellular activities. That's you walking up the stairs. That's you doing anything you want to do, physically, brain power, whatever it may be. So if you have just a few free radicals causing just a little bit of oxidative stress, that's okay. Because then you have, to balance it out, tons of ATP, you're energetic, and you're at low risk for cancer, heart disease, diabetes, etc. Because there's not a lot of free radical damage. So what are free radicals? Free radicals are sometimes called these. Well, think about it. It's like it's unpaired electron. But to keep it simple, a free radical is bad. A free radical comes in and hits a structure like a mitochondria and physically damages it. It has to do with its electron balance and how it pulls things around. But simply put, I think of it like if you've ever seen Star Wars, any of the movies, doesn't really matter. They're all pretty much the same. And if you're not a Star Wars fan, Star Trek, this works really well too, because there's always like a scene where there's a battle and there's a starship or there's a Death Star or something like that. And it's really clear that you have to hit this Death Star or starship with a bunch of missiles in order to blow it up. And that's the whole point of the movie, is to destroy this bad guy thing, right? So think about free radicals as like the missiles coming in that are hitting the ship. Boom, boom, boom. Free radicals are causing damage, structural damage. In our case, what we're talking about tonight, to the mitochondria. But free radicals can hit your DNA, right? Free radicals causing oxidative stress are really this whole problem that we're focused on tonight. So oxidative stress, again, is created by free radicals. In a healthy cell, there's not too much of that happening. So we have plenty of energy. If you look on the right, unhealthy, I'll put a big U here, unhealthy, what's happening? There's a lot more free radicals. Free radicals are bad. This means that this is like a mitochondria, in our example, that's being hit over and over and over and over, thousands and thousands of times. There's a lot of oxidative stress. There's a lot of free radicals hitting and destroying this. And then what happens is, you can see here, the ATP supply starts to shrink. What does that mean? That means we don't have the ability to make a lot of energy. Why? Because this is where we make our energy, and it's getting damaged from being hit by all this oxidative stress or all these free radicals. Bad, 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 bad. This is bad. So when it's bad, there's a lot of free radicals, and there's not a lot of ATP. And this is another reason why people get tired. The mitochondria is under attack. Now, what creates oxidative stress? Chemicals, heavy metals, digestive problems, anything that's generating a lot of toxins or toxic byproducts in the body is going to generate oxidative stress. So if we clean up the gut, we get rid of toxins, support the liver, we can reduce oxidative stress and take the pressure off the mitochondria. And that's a talk for some other time. But for tonight's purposes, what we're worried about is just fixing the mitochondria, taking a damaged mitochondria and bringing it back so it's healthy. Okay? So we have to reduce oxidative stress so that the mitochondria is no longer getting hit by all these missiles or damaged. And at the same time, we want to repair the inner workings of the mitochondria, bring them back to where it should be. Now, I hope this isn't too confusing. Maybe review. Oxidative stress is bad. It happens because of digestive problems, liver toxicity issues. There's something that's generating a lot of oxidative stress. In a healthy individual, there's a few free radicals, a little bit of oxidative stress, and a ton of ATP and energy. In an unhealthy individual, there's a ton of free radicals, there's a ton of oxidative stress, and that damages the ATP supply. It would be like if someone came up to the engine in your car and just started to hit it with a hammer and just started to break things. It's not going to work as well. That's what's happening inside our bodies because of oxidative stress. So the end result of all this, if I was going to summarize this slide in one sentence for like a 4-year-old kid, I would look at the kid and I would say, oxidative stress makes you tired. Boom. End of story. Oxidative stress makes you fat. End of story. Why? Because it damages the mitochondria. Okay, and then we have a whole bunch of slides. we can talk about this. Again, for those of you that like the detail, you can come back later and take a look at the slides. We record all these webinars, so if you want, you're welcome to read it. But this is basically a summary of what I just said. Okay, a little bit on the technical side. Now, there's another talk coming up. Okay, April 13th, the third one in the series is going to be talking about energy and appetite and about neurotransmitters. That's going to be really good. But let me go back. I'm going to show you some examples of how this actually plays out in the real world so you can see what these tests are like. And I know when my dad was dying, I still remember this day so clearly, it's coming up on the anniversary of it. Maybe that's why I'm thinking about it so much. But I remember the surgeon walking out of the surgery room, and he didn't look very happy. He was clearly not happy with what was happening. And he was just basically shaking his head. And my sisters and I are there. We're all crying. We're like, oh, my God, what's going on here? And, the surgeon was a wonderful guy. I don't have any regrets about having him. But he basically said, there's nothing I can do. And that kind of moment is just so I don't know what you would say, somewhat almost disturbing, to think about these things. And I really want, but there was a mystery. I mean, that's the point, is that, we were just sitting there. We didn't really know what was going on. No one really explained anything to us. We didn't understand what was happening. And I really believe in empowerment of patients, that you guys should know a lot about this. Hey, it's your body. It's not your doctor's body. It's your body. And if you got a problem with it, you should start to understand how these things work. So when we're doing a functional medicine workup, as always, it's not a single test. So I just want to reiterate, it's not just an organic acids profile. We test the adrenals, we test the thyroid, we test the gut. We're looking for the sources of oxidative stress. But tonight's talk is about this one area, so I want to show it to you. So here's what the actual tests look like. And the sections that we're talking about tonight include fatty acid metabolism and energy production primarily, and a little bit about carbohydrate metabolism. But we talked about that in more detail last time. And very importantly, we're talking about oxidative stress, oxidative damage. Now, remember, oxidative stress is what nukes the mitochondria. So we want to be able to prevent oxidative damage or reduce oxidative damage to protect the mitochondria, to protect your energy production. And that's one of the goals here. So I'll show you a series of different labs so you can see how this plays out. Just as some examples. So remember we talked about fat burning. Here's your adipate, suberate, and ethylmalonate. They're just being measured here. That lets you know, can you grab that fat molecule, that lazy fat cell, can you grab those fatty acids from that lazy fat cell and transport them over to the portion of the cell, portion of the mitochondria where you can burn it up for energy? If adipate, suberate, or ethylmalonate are high, then that process is broken. Remember the traffic's building up bad. If these levels are high, you got a problem with fat burning. I'm going to show you a bunch of examples. I'm going to just describe it first. Now, the Krebs cycle itself, or citric acid cycle itself, is laid out here. The fact that you can test for this stuff is just like nearly a miracle. Nearly a miracle. Like, everybody should know this. I know I just said this like half an hour ago, but you guys should just know this. This should be like common knowledge. Like they should teach us in like the 5th grade or 8th grade or something like that. So people know that you can actually assess these things. So you don't have, because what I find with patients that I work with is that, it's not great to not feel great. And nobody wants to be sick. Nobody wants to walk around with like an autoimmune problem or being tired all the time or not feeling like having sex anymore or just being, like depressed. Nobody wants that. But what's really just the worst part of it is not knowing why. And I find that when I work with patients, if we can just show them the test and say, hey, your energy production pathways are not working. This is why you're tired. Look at that number there. Bad. Look at that number there. Bad. That just knowing that there's a real problem and it's not in their head and that there's a reason why this is happening, that is literally half of the cure. Just understanding, okay, there's some biochemical reason why I don't feel great. That takes so much pressure off of us because when we're facing the unknown, it's just devastating to not understand why we don't feel well. And especially if you see a conventional doctor and you order some basic blood work and everything looks fine, they don't see anything wrong. To be told that there's nothing wrong when you know something's wrong is an incredibly frustrating experience for people. Now, the very good news here is that we're seeing this trend now in functional medicine. There are more and more and more conventional medical doctors getting involved in training in functional medicine now, more than I ever would have imagined. So we're really seeing a wonderful change in that regard. Okay, so now you're looking at this and you're saying, okay, well, what is this? Citrate, isocitrate, alpha-ketoglutarate, fumarate. I don't really understand what these things are. Hydroxymethylglutarate. There's 7 markers here. So I'm just going to cut back to the PowerPoint for a second. I want to show you exactly what they're measuring. Once you see this, you're going to be like, oh, well, that's not that complicated, is it? So bear with me here. We're going back to our Krebs cycle. Ding, 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 right there. So those markers that you just saw, look, citrate. Your body grabs acetyl-CoA. It needs to convert it into citrate to make energy. There's our isocitrate. There's our alpha-ketoglutarate. These are the steps in the citric acid cycle. I think of it like a bicycle chain. And each one of these is like a link. If you had a bicycle chain that had 4 links that were broken, it wouldn't work. Can you imagine how stupid that would be? If you took your bicycle chain and it had 4 broken links and you locked your bike up and you came back and you're like, whoa, my bike is gone. I wonder why that. And you see this bike chain sitting there. You wouldn't, I mean, obviously if something is not conducting to the next thing, it's not working. And these are the steps in energy production. Again, citrate, isocitrate, alpha-ketoglutarate, succinate, fumarate, malate. Each one of these steps has to be working, or it's like having one broken link in a chain. The chain is like basically ineffective. And ultimately, we're driving towards the production of ATP. Now, let's look at this lab then. Again, citrate, you see all this? Now, let's look at this example. Here they are. Citrate, isocitrate, alpha-ketoglutarate, fumarate, right? And in this particular patient, there was 2 broken links in the chain. So how can this person make energy in their mitochondria if those 2 critical steps are not working? And then you may ask, well, that's all kind of interesting, but what are you going to do about it? And, well, what are you going to do about it is, it's not that complicated, you guys. Well, look. There's key nutrients that make all this work. Well, what are they? Well, they're all right here on this chart. It's not like private information that's being held back from anyone. There's amino acids over here. There's nutrients like CoQ10. Okay. There's B vitamins that make all this work. There's lipoic acid. There's magnesium. These are the nutrients that are required. So like, for example, if you see one of the blocks in the area like right here, then you know that the person needs magnesium in order to make energy. If you see a block somewhere else, like down over here, you know the person needs CoQ10 in order to make energy. This is like a roadmap to what your nutritional deficiencies are in order to fire back up the energy-producing portions of your cell. This is how we repair the mitochondria. And what does that do? It makes you feel better. It gets you burning fat and carbs better. It starts to enhance every aspect of your body because you need this ATP all over the place. You need ATP just to detoxify. Okay? You need ATP to run every system. So if this system is crashed and non-functional, your weight gain is the least of it. There's much more important things that are going to go wrong than just weight gain. All right, so let's look at the rest of this test. The other super duper triple important part of this that we talked a lot about is oxidative damage. So remember we said oxidative damage is bad. Why? It's one of the major risk factors for heart attacks. I should say for cardiovascular disease in general. It's one of the major risk factors for cancer development, for diabetes. Oxidative stress means tissues are being damaged. It's very bad. It means there's a lot of free radicals. And here, we're measuring it. Look at this, you guys. Seriously, if the only thing they measured on this test for the $300 or $400 that it cost, if the only thing they measured on this test were the antioxidant levels, I would think this is a bargain. I mean, how can you walk around your life not knowing what your antioxidant protection is? And how many people take antioxidants and have no clue whether they need them or not. Okay, you can over supplement. You can definitely over supplement, and that, I mean, I see that all the time in my practice. And as a matter of fact, I bet a lot of people will probably spend $300 or $400 a year taking antioxidants they don't need. It would be cheaper if they just did the test and they figured out what they actually needed to take. Anyways, this is such a critical marker. Numbers 28 and number 29 measure how much oxidative stress that we're under. Now remember, if we're under a lot of oxidative stress, it means that the mitochondria are getting hit all the time in a very negative way and being destroyed. That's going to make you tired. If you're under a lot of oxidative stress, you need antioxidant supplements, and you need to take a deep, long look at how many vegetables you're consuming. Because vegetables are bottom line where we get our antioxidants. Plants spend their whole lives outside. Plants have problems too. They do. Plants, imagine if you're a plant, you're outside. I don't know, what are you? Like, you're like, I don't know, cauliflower plant or a broccoli plant, or you're a strawberry plant, or whatever you are. You're a plant, you're outside, you're a vegetable, you're a fruit, you're something like that. And you're just trying to grow, you're just trying to get by, you're just trying to make a good life for yourself. But what's happening every day is the sun is coming up and zapping you with ionizing radiation. So you're sitting there and you're just like a big fat target for the sun, which is good because that allows you to go through photosynthesis and do all the important things that plants do. But it's bad because the sun, ionizing radiation, is what? It causes a lot of oxidative stress. So plants have oxidative stress too. So plants have developed a defense system against oxidative stress. What do? They produce antioxidants. How clever is that? Plants make antioxidants, and we see these antioxidants visually as pigments, as colors. Blueberries are blue, broccoli is green. What you're seeing when you see the blue and the blueberry are the pigments that make that color, which are the antioxidants that the plant grew to protect itself. Do plants care about us? Not a lot. Like, I've never met a plant that was like, sent me a Christmas card or something, right? Plants could give a hoot about human beings. They're growing antioxidants themselves in order to protect themselves from oxidative stress. So all we have to do is go around, grab the plant, and eat it. Well, you have to kill it first. This is like a little bit of an unpleasant process. You have to grab the plant, you kill it in the process, chew it up and eat it. And guess what? You get all the antioxidants that that plant produced to protect itself. This is where antioxidants come from. This is the strongest argument you could have for eating vegetables. And you have to eat vegetables every day, every meal, or you're not going to have enough antioxidants to protect yourself against oxidative stress. That's just the bottom line. And if you're not eating vegetables every day with every meal, you're going to have a problem. And it's ridiculous to try to take supplements if you're not eating the right food, right? So functional medicine is not based on making people take tons of supplements because you're afraid that you don't have enough antioxidants. Functional medicine is based on the idea like, hey, my antioxidant markers are really pretty bad. Am I eating vegetables every day with every meal? No, I'm not. Well, maybe I should start to eat vegetables every day with every meal, and maybe that would get a little bit better. Okay, so remember antioxidants and oxidative damage. So let's take a look at a few more of these. We're going to come back around in later sessions too and look at other tests. So this is just the beginning, but I want to show you a few examples. Oh, here's a really good one. So remember, we're talking about energy production markers. These are all real patients of mine, by the way. Of course, we took their names out and everything and made fake names, but these are real patients. Energy production markers. Look at that. And remember, high is bad. High is like, a freeway that's backed up and you see all these cars, not a good thing. These chemicals backing up is bad. If you think high is bad, very high is very bad. How many markers are positive? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is like a 7-unit chain that has 6 broken links. How could you expect this person to wake up in the morning and say, it's a beautiful day, I'm full of energy, I'm going to run downstairs and make breakfast for my kids? No, this person is waking up first thing in the morning going, crap, I don't even feel like getting out of bed. I am so exhausted. And they look at their clock and like, I slept for 8 hours. Why am I so tired? You're just looking at the image of their fatigue right here on the test. Problems, problems, problems. Let's look at the lab. You can see it's like a bloodbath in the mitochondria. It's like there's a war going on. It's, you know, and what can you say? Look at these numbers. Look how many things are messed up. There's whole sections. There's no way a person can feel good if that's what's happening inside their body. Not possible. Let me just show you one or two more. Once you see a few of these, you know, it's not that hard, right? You start going, wait a minute, I kind of get this. You might have to re-listen to this lecture once, but oh my gosh, here's another one. Oh, here's one with both. Oh, you love this. All right. So remember, fatty acid metabolism, if adipate, subeate, or ethylmalonate are high, that's bad. That means you can't grab that fatty acid and burn it up. So right away, you're tired and overweight just because of that. And then if some miracle occurred and you managed to get that fatty acid down into the mitochondria, it wouldn't matter anyways because the mitochondria is not working. Look at this person's mitochondria. Just absolute mess, right? High is bad. Very high is very bad. Let's look at the actual lab. Oh, and here we go. We talked about oxidative stress or oxidative damage. This marker here, 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine. This is something, if you're like sitting around, you want to Google something, and you're tired of reading about the election, Google 8-OHDG. Not right now because I'm talking, but Google it like tomorrow morning when you're bored. 8-OHDG stands for 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine, and 8-OHDG is one of the main, if not the main, way to measure oxidative stress. Okay, and what we're seeing on this patient, and I'll show you real quick here, and then we're going to wrap things up. I'll show you the actual lab itself. Here we go. So remember, fatty acid metabolism, we have adipate and subeate both elevated. One is bad, two is extra bad. We're looking then down at the citric acid cycle, energy production markers. We've got nearly this entire system shut down. And why is that happening? Are they under oxidative stress? Is that what's damaging the mitochondria? We look at the antioxidant markers, the oxidative stress markers, and yes, there's a lot of oxidative stress, and this is exactly what we're talking about. Oxidative stress hitting the mitochondria, damaging the mitochondria, fat-burning metabolism, not working either. Now we're tired. We've got a lot of oxidative stress. We can't burn fat, and that is like the modern predicament. And so we want to use supplements and lifestyle changes to start to correct this. Antioxidants, carnitine, the things that we use to boost up the mitochondria include CoQ10, lipoic acid, really key B vitamins. It's a little complicated. It's a little bit of a biochemistry kind of conundrum to figure all this out, but that's basically what we're working towards. Now, if you're interested in more information about this, we're going to have another talk on the neurotransmitters. This time we're going to cover another talk on organic acids. The next time in a month, we're going to cover neurotransmitters. We'll try to tie this all together for you. Then we're going to talk about gut markers and then about detoxification. But I hope tonight's helpful. I'm going to just summarize real quick in our last couple of minutes here what the whole point of this is that you have a healthy mitochondria. If you're under a lot of oxidative stress, that mitochondria becomes damaged. Now it can't make energy. Now you can't burn fat. This is your fat burning mechanism. This is your energy producing mechanism. The more oxidative stress you're under, the more damaged it becomes. And so the solutions here, reduce oxidative stress, take care of your liver and your gut, repair the mitochondria. Again, CoQ10, lipoic acid, B vitamins. There's very complex combinations of these nutrients that we use to do the repair. Get the oxidative stress out of the system so you can bring the system back to a normal balance. And that's really the goal for what we're doing here. Now, let's see. We'll just end with this one because this is my favorite picture there. We're trying to make this system work. It's normal function, normal physiology. What Dr. Timmons always used to say is, all we're trying to do in functional medicine is restore normal function, normal physiology. That's it. We're not trying to make people superhuman. We're not trying to do anything that's abnormal. We're just trying to restore normal function, normal physiology. All right. I'm going to wrap things up now. I'm going to address a few questions that came in here, but we're done with the official part. If you want to do something, positive based on this lecture, and you haven't eaten any vegetables today, I would just run to like the organic grocery store, buy some vegetables, and that'll hopefully help you feel a little bit better. Okay, so let's take a look at questions that came in. I'm going to try to answer a few of them. Oh, most of these are just like, oh yeah. So the testing. Well, any functional medicine doctor should know about these. There's a couple different labs that you can order these tests from, but your doctor should know all that stuff. Okay. Uh, let's see. Why would someone have these so high? Let's see. So the two main companies are Great Plains and Genova that run these tests. They're almost interchangeable, although the tests are slightly different between the two. And then another question that came in is yes. So when you're when you see a lot of these markers positive, and you see some of these patients that I showed you had just test after test after test positive, it means that you're very acidic. So another thing that you can do, because obviously these are organic acids, we're measuring acids. If all these levels are very high, there's some really simple things you can do to make yourself less acidic. The most basic and simple thing you can do right away is to drink a fair amount of water. Okay? Because when we're dehydrated, we become very acidic. The other thing that you can do is start to take some minerals, some very simple minerals like calcium, magnesium, to make yourself less acidic. So many markers positive on this test means a person is very acidic. And the big picture that we're looking at in order to correct these problems is taking gut-related problems, which we're going to talk about in a later talk, taking liver and toxin-related problems and eliminating those so we can eliminate the oxidative stress. All right, I hope this was helpful. I appreciate your time, and we're up at our hour. Look forward to joining you for the next talk in a month. Bye for now.